When I began my flower farming journey about 5 years ago now, I can remember the feeling I had when I first got all my glorious seed packets in hand. It was exciting and began to feel real. It was an intoxicating time and I couldn't wait to get seed starting. Then I started flipping over the packets to find out when I needed to start my seeds so they would be ready to plant out at the optimal time of the year. That's when the confusion set in. 4 weeks before last frost date, 8 weeks before last frost date, over and over, each seed packet had similar directions, whether it was a zinnia or a bachelor button. The number of weeks would change, but they all were set around this last frost date. My head started spinning in confusion. I knew enough that the idea was to success sow and that I should have bachelor buttons in spring and zinnias in summer. Then I realized that I was not fully understanding the meaning of the terms or how to apply those terms to my seed sowing schedule. Since I know many of your mailboxes are getting flooded with seed packets, I thought I would take a minute to break down the common terminology and give you some tools to better understand when to seed start and what seeds to start. This will be a launching point for you to kick off your seed starting, but isn't an exact metric. For that sake, we are keeping this simple and will be focusing primarily on annuals. Let's tackle hardiness zones. Hardiness zone. We see it on our seed packets, plant tags, and hear other growers refer to it all the time. Your hardiness zone is going to tell you what you can safely overwinter in your region, from perennials, biennials, to fall planted annuals, with no additional protection. In general, it tells you the average low temperatures for your area. If you haven't already looked up your zone, find the link to the USDA hardiness map in the description below, where you plug in your zip code and snag that awesome bit of information. You will see other growers in your same hardiness zone, but in a different region planting out crops while your soil is still frozen. But you're in the same hardiness zone, right? The hardiness zone is going to tell you the what. What can be overwintered, not when you can seed start. Your when will not align with other growers in the same hardiness zone, but different regions. Also, hardiness zone behaviors can shift. For example, we are in Zone 6B. This is not cemented. Some years our climate has Zone 5-like behavior, while others 7. We prepare for exceptionally rough winters, work as it is the assigned 6B, and take advantage of years where we have a more mild winter. Now that we understand how to better apply hardiness zones to our crop planning, let's dive into some basic concepts for us to begin to figure out the when. Understanding the different levels of frosts and freezes will help you better understand which varieties can be planted out sooner and handle which level of frost. A light frost can happen when temperatures dip below 37 down to 32 degrees Fahrenheit for a short period of time. This is when it frosts, but not long enough to cause plant tissue damage in hardier crops, but could cause damage to frost-sensitive crops when below 32 degrees. A kill frost or hard frost is what it sounds. This is when temperatures drop below 32 degrees Fahrenheit for multiple hours. This is the frost that can kill back plants and even roots if it is happening for multiple nights. A freeze is when the temperature drops below freezing long enough to cause the plant cells, which is made majority of water, to freeze, thus ruining the plant's tissue. This normally happens at 28 degrees Fahrenheit and below, but can happen at 32 degrees Fahrenheit if it is maintained long enough. So, which crops are hardy and which ones aren't? Knowing the two basic categories of annuals, hardy and tender, will help to answer that. Hardy annuals are varieties of plants that can handle freezes, and most of these guys actually need the cold. Hardy annuals are typically the varieties you see grown for spring or fall crops. Some varieties will grow leggy, short, or have small blooms if they don't grow in colder weather. Many of you have probably heard of Lisa Ziegler's cool flowers. When she is talking about cool flowers, she is talking about hardy annuals and biennials. Some examples of hardy annuals are sweet peas, orleia, strawflower, and bells of Ireland. Tender annuals are the varieties to blame for all the confusion in the first place. These are warm, loving varieties that are incredibly sensitive to frost, typically not being able to handle temperatures below 37. If it gets down to 32, you will start to see some serious damage, especially on mature plants. These are the guys that like to be planted out when you would typically plant out tomatoes. Marigolds, basil, and zinnias are all examples. Frost dates are going to tie all these elements together to give you the win behind your seed sowing. The last frost date is going to tell you when to sow seeds or plant. This part can get a little tricky. You are not specifically looking at just the average frost date like a typical hobbyist gardener does. There are different levels of frost and average lows, so really you are looking at a last frost range based upon the statistical likelihood that X date will be the last day in the spring to have a temperature of Y. Don't worry. This sounds a lot more technical than it really is, and I know of a cheat sheet that does most of the work for you. I will provide a link at the bottom of this video for you to take a peek at. All you have to do is input your zip code and you can snag the range of last or first temperature dates for your area. This is a starting point for you to begin to start making your seed sowing and planting out schedule. I will say, looking at the table and comparing to my own notes, I know this table is a little extreme in what it is saying for lows, at least for our area. The best thing you can do is take notes, invest in a digital temperature tracker like a sensor push, and start logging your microclimate's temperatures. With the knowledge of the varying dates of your average low temperatures for your area, you will take that relevant frost date for the crop you are looking to start and count backwards the number of weeks stated on the seed packet to get your first seed sowing date, your first succession. Yay! Then from there, you can count forward to map out your other successions for that crop. Granted, this does take knowing the basic growing needs of the crop you are planting. Before you get too carried away sowing zinnias through September, you will additionally need to know your first frost date in fall. This will tell you what the last succession of a crop you can plant. By using the day to maturity stated on the seed packet, you can count backwards from there, add a couple weeks, and voila, your last sow date for that crop. We will also provide a link at the bottom of a days from date calculator we use online to save you from getting cross-eyed flipping through the calendar. Soil temperature is a big one. Even if the nighttime temperatures are still not ideal for a specific crop, the soil temperature may be. An example would be when hardier crops have tissue damage from a frost, but if you can keep the roots from freezing, it can still grow new foliage and will most likely provide a great crop. Understanding the soil temperature needs for the variety helps determine, along with these other factors, when to plant out and what can be overwintered. If the soil is at the ideal temperature for that crop a minimum 3 days in a row, you are probably safe to plant out. For example, I tend to begin keeping track of soil temperatures in late April, early May to determine when to plant out dahlia tubers who like their soil cozy at 60 degrees Fahrenheit and above. Even though the weather may be chilly, the soil is likely warmer and does not freeze as easily as the air. Another factor that will impact when and what to seed sow will be your use of season extension methods. Are you strictly going to field grow? Are you going to utilize low tunnels, double low tunnels? Are you working with an unheated hoop house? If you are going to use season extension methods, you can bump up your seed sowing date by 2 to 4 weeks depending upon your chosen method. Photoperiod is another confusing term. This means the crop's daylight sensitivity. Some crops of the plants thrive and will bloom under the shorter days of fall, winter, and spring, while others need the long days of summer to produce marketable stems. You see this a lot with snapdragon varieties and sunflowers as two examples. This information is used mainly for greenhouse growers, but the information is still valuable for the field grower. It will tell you the ideal time of year for the crop to bloom. Example, last year we had our ranunculus shutting down on us late May. Even though it was a cold late spring, it wasn't the heat that was shutting them down, but rather the longer days. We popped some shade cloth over them and were able to squeeze out a couple more weeks of production. Understanding the needs and habits of the varieties you are growing is important and will help you know what crops you will have when. Okay, let's do a quick recap. Your hardiness zone is going to tell you what you can safely overwinter. Your frost dates are going to tell you when to grow. Last frost, when to plant out. First frost date determines your last succession. Soil doesn't freeze as quick as the air. Check those soil temperatures. Hardy annuals can handle some freezing temperatures. Tender annuals cannot. Season extension methods will allow you to get a jump start on your growing season or give you some extra time at the end of the growing season. Take notes. Begin to build up your own data of information. Hopefully this video helped to demystify some of these terms to give you a better understanding of when to start seed sowing and what to seed sow. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below and share with your friends. Until next time, we are looking forward to helping you hand bloom soon.